We begin this hour with chilling new details of the chaos that engulfed the United States consulate in Benghazi, Libya. These photos show what now appears to have been a coordinated attack, possibly a terrorist operation. It killed 4 Americans, including the United States ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens. This afternoon, President Obama visited Stevens' grieving colleagues over at the State Department and signed a condolence book. Earlier over at the White House, he vowed the United States will hunt down the people behind the attack.
The United States condemns in the strongest terms this outrageous and shocking attack. We're working with the government of Libya to secure our diplomats. I've also directed my administration to increase our security at diplomatic posts around the world. And make no mistake, we will work with the Libyan government to bring to justice the killers who attacked our people.
Our foreign affairs correspondent Jill Doherty is over at the State Department with more on how this deadly attack unfolded. What's the latest information, Jill, that you're getting?
Wolf, we had that briefing, and what they're saying is they're cautioning that they're dealing with first reports from Benghazi and a lot of confusion. But here's what we know so far. Tuesday night at the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, a complex and highly dangerous situation. Outside, an anti-American protest. Then, a group of heavily armed militants, approximately 24 of them, launched an attack firing rocket-propelled grenades.
The attack in Libya appears to be a very coordinated military-style attack. This was not a demonstration gone bad. This was a clear, targeted, planned event.
According to senior U.S. officials, that ignited a fire inside the consulate. American and Libyan security personnel, officials say, were forced to fight on 2 fronts. The attackers on the outside, the fire inside. Diplomatic sources are beginning to piece together what happened next. Officials tell CNN Ambassador Chris Stevens in Benghazi on a short visit from the capital, Tripoli, along with Sean Smith, a 10-year veteran of the State Department in Libya on temporary assignment, took refuge in a safe room along with a lead security officer. But the room became filled with smoke. The officer left the room, they say. When he returned, Smith was dead. Ambassador Stevens was missing. One official says Stevens and possibly others were trying to escape to the roof. But then confusion. Officials say Stevens got out and somehow ended up at the hospital. Unconfirmed reports say he may have been unconscious. His body later was returned to U.S. officials at the Benghazi airport. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton praised the Libyans who, she said, helped fight off the attackers and carried Ambassador Stevens' body to the hospital.
This was an attack by a small and savage group, not the people or government of Libya.
At this point, State Department officials believe the attack was planned in advance, but do not believe Ambassador Stevens was directly targeted. Nicholas Burns, a former top State Department official, tells CNN U.S. diplomats are facing an incendiary situation in the Middle East.
The cruel irony here is that the United States is well regarded in Libya, and there's a moderate government in place, and this is clearly the actions of an isolated and very small but very vicious terrorist group. And so we've got to protect ourselves from those groups, and we've got to go after them.
So 4 killed, at least 3 wounded, and they are being taken to Ramstein Air Base in Germany for treatment, as are the remains of those who died. Wolf?
Thanks very much, Jill Doherty over at the Pentagon. Swift response to the attack, including deployment of a special Marine force. Our Pentagon correspondent, Chris Lawrence, is working that part of the story for us. Chris, what are you picking up over there?
Well, Wolf, we now know that the 50-man Marine team, the Special Quick Response Team, is now on the ground in Tripoli, in Libya. They're going to be helping beef up security there for the American diplomats who are still in Libya, as well as helping to evacuate more Americans if that becomes necessary. We've also now learned that certain troops and units all around the world have been notified that they may be moved to U.S. embassies around the world to help beef up some of the security there. Now, right now, we believe that only applies to some of the troops that are stationed overseas, not troops back here in the U.S. Wolf?
What about President Obama, Chris? He said that justice will be done. What's going on in that regard? Because that suggests to me the U.S. will try to hunt down those responsible for the killing of those Americans, either arrest them, detain them, or kill them.
Well, the options certainly seem to be falling into place quickly, Wolf. We learned today that the U.S. has confirmed that they have been flying drone surveillance flights over Libya for several months. But now we're told that those flights will become more focused, looking specifically for that insurgent cell that was behind this attack. And now we're hearing that the U.S. Navy is moving 2 warships to the coast of Libya. Both of those warships are equipped with Tomahawk cruise missiles. That's important because the Tomahawks are guided by the satellite and can be programmed to hit a very specific target. Together with the surveillance drones and these missiles, that gives the administration some options if it decides to go ahead with an attack.
Assume they will. Thanks very much, Chris Lawrence over at the Pentagon. Let's get some more now with our national security contributor, Fran Townsend. She was the Homeland Security Advisor to President George W. Bush. She's also a member of both the CIA External Advisory Committee as well as the Homeland Security External Advisory Committee. Kate is here as well.
Absolutely. And just last month, Fran was in Libya as her visited Libya with her employer, McAndrews and Forbes. Fran, thanks for coming in. Thank you so much. So first question, I guess, is do you have any indication or any information that this was a premeditated attack on the consulate in Libya, as Secretary Clinton said, by a small and savage group? What are you picking up?
You know what? Look, I think that they're going through it was chaos there, and a lot of this unfolded over the last 12 to 18 hours. But there isn't, from the folks I've spoken to, they haven't found any indication of pre-planning of this attack. It's hard to imagine something this large and this savage could have happened sort of spontaneously. And it may be that, look, there's clearly this group, Ansar al-Sharia, which is an affiliate of al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, that northern African affiliate of al-Qaeda, in that area to the east of where Benghazi is. And so it's entirely possible that they were able to take advantage of a very bad situation.
You know, I just spoke to Mike Rogers, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He's a very smart guy. He said to me specifically, here in the Situation Room, he said, this attack, quote, had the hallmark of an al-Qaeda-style event. Do you agree with that?
I think it's hard to say that yet, Wolf. I mean, look, I think what we know is Ansar al-Sharia is an affiliate of al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, so there is some al-Qaeda's in this mix here. But I'm not sure we know yet whether or not, I mean, the fact that there was a protest, there were shots fired, there was a breach, I don't know that we can say yet that it was it has the hallmarks of al-Qaeda.
Well,
I mean, I think of an al-Qaeda attack like the East Africa embassy bombings with a big car explosion. I mean, maybe this is the new al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb.
Smaller scale stuff.
And
Exactly.
as Jill Jordy just told us, they are just getting first reports out of Benghazi. They're working through all the information that they can right now. But I do want to ask you, you were in Libya just 2 weeks ago. What was your sense from the situation on the ground? What was the security situation like down there?
You know, it's interesting. When you travel to a war zone, as many of our colleagues know, there's a big military package around you. And although it's a war zone, you feel very secure. And that was not at all my feeling in Tripoli. Frankly, I was coming back from dinner at night. There were multiple checkpoints of militias, ununiformed, heavily armed, not clear what the command and control was. There was a very tense feeling when they would stop your car. You didn't know what they were going to ask you or what they were going to say. And so I raised that issue with the ambassador, who I saw the next morning for breakfast.
Ambassador.
Chris Stevens, who's tragically been killed now. And, you know, his frame of reference, he had been with the rebels in Benghazi prior to Gaddafi, the fall of the Gaddafi regime. And so he sort of felt very comfortable, and it was certainly an improvement over the early days of the fighting. But he acknowledged that it was going to take some time for Libyan security forces to integrate the militias into their ranks, get them trained, get them uniformed, and so that there was a real fragility to the security situation
Give us a
in
thought
Libya.
about Ambassador Stevens, and obviously our condolences go out to his family.
You know, he was beloved. I mean, he walked into the hotel where we were having breakfast. The Libyans clearly adored him. He loved Libya. He had been my control officer on a 2007 visit when I went to...
What does that mean, a control officer?
He was the officer, the diplomatic officer responsible for my visit. I was coming from the White House. I was the most senior person at that time to visit with Gaddafi. And he was responsible for the visit. And so I knew him, and that he had come back as the ambassador. He had a deep love and respect for the country, for the people of Libya. And he was, frankly, very optimistic, very hopeful about the ability of the Libyans to form this new government. and to secure their own borders and their own people. So it's really a tragic loss, certainly for the United States, but also for Libya.
Yeah, everybody says he was very, very optimistic. That's the word you keep hearing. Fran, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Mitt Romney is reacting to all of this as well. We're getting a little bit of a political firestorm that's emerging right now. Romney under fire himself, even from some fellow Republicans. We're going to have details of what's going on.